This is the 007 Debriefings. I'm Intelligence Officer Wiz.
And I'm Weapons Specialist Zero.
Zero, how you doing this week?
A little bit on the sleepy side. The job I'm on is kind of got nothing going. The client's just struggling with their own things, and of course me, I'm just like, hey guys, you got anything? And they're like, nothing. And I'm just like, okay, back to sitting on my hands.
Yeah, Jesus, man, that sucks. But then again, you already knew with the job that you were doing that this was bound to happen. I can't come up with a clever one this week, I'm sorry. We are here to comb the files of MI6 to discuss the cinematic adventures of one James Bond. This week, Goldeneye. Zero, I gotta talk about two things. One, I thought I saw this originally, and now that I have actually seen it all the way through, I don't think I've ever seen it to completion until now, so this will be my first time watching Goldeneye, apparently.
My God.
Secondly, there's a weird thing with Goldeneye specifically, and the thing that I keep seeing online, and mainly with Bond fans, especially from the 90s, is that Brosnan helped jumpstart Bond into a much bigger stratosphere, and it started with Goldeneye. Do you agree with that statement?
Yes, but also I think it has to do with the co-marketing that they did with some of the IRL brands, because IBM's featured very heavily in this movie. All the computers that they work on, they're IBM workstations of some sort. Natalia even goes into like an IBM Russia store and basically like has a list of computers that she's trying to be cheeky with to say, hey, you know, I'm a buyer for a school and I need all these computers, but you have to let me play with these computers for me to make the decision. You've got IBM featured so heavily. And then on the car side, Aston Martin out, BMW in. That was another big one because, of course, this is like everyone's like, oh my God, we're going big with like BMW. Oh my God. That was another big one. The watch that Bond uses this time, it's not a Seiko like it has been in the past. It's the Omega brand watches, which are very, very pricey if you've seen the price tag on them. Another big change, because in like the past Bond movies, he's worn a lot of just classy Seiko watches, and there have even been like hidden billboards for the Seiko brand in some of the past Bond movies that we've watched. And of course this time they're just like, nope, Bond deserves the best of the best, so give him a luxury watch. And then of course I think what also jump-started the popularity is just Bond this time being played by Pierce Brosnan. He's the classy womanizer type, sharp dresser, and of course that's kind of what a lot of people sort of latch onto as the ideal modern day contemporary image of Bond, and I think that's kind of what sort of kickstarts everything.
Okay, so you think the popularity started because of the brands that attached itself and Brosnan himself? Is that what you're saying? Okay, I disagree. Goldeneye did well in the box office, and so did the following film. And critics were pretty good with Pierce Brosnan, if I remember correctly. But I don't think that's what jump-started the popularity of Bond to where it is now. I think it has to do with one thing, and it's not a movie. It's GoldenEye 007 for N64. Do you know when GoldenEye 64 came out? Oh, you know what year.
97.
Yeah, of course. Who am I talking to? Yeah, 1997. The same year that Tomorrow Never Dies came out. If you look at the box office, when it comes to the next movies, which is The World's Not Enough and Die Another Day, box office goes up and up as that time goes. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that GoldenEye was a huge game back then. I think that popularity gave the brand a bigger boost than I think it would have possibly ever had, and then led to a younger generation wanting to watch more Bond films, which would then go into movies like Quantum of Solace and Skyfall making enormous amounts of money. I think this is directly correlated to how popular GoldenEye 007 was on N64. I think that's where it came. Because if you just would have kept it with the movies, I think it would have stayed the same. But after GoldenEye N64, I think it shot to the stratosphere at that point.
The other thing about GoldenEye is, at least for the N64 release, if I remember correctly, my cousin bought a copy during the launch period, and if I remember correctly, some stores were bundling it with a free VHS copy of GoldenEye. So it was kind of like oh, are you just buying this because you like games made by Rare? Well, we've got a treat for you. Here's the movie it's based on. It was kind of like something that was given away en gratis. And I remember just my cousin bringing the thing home, and he's like, oh my God, this is so cool. I got a free copy of the Bond movie. I've seen it before, but this is awesome. And I was just like, oh, that's neat. You know, just giving away the movie that the game's based on, and the movie is a relatively good movie. and it's got the backing of Rare, and Rare tends to make pretty good games. Okay, that sounds like one hell of a treat.
Yeah,
so
that's smart marketing right there. I didn't even know that. Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's get into our mission objectives. We go through all the Bond films and talk about specific categories with that Bond film. So let's get started with 007, which is James Bond played by Pierce Brosnan.
Super, super classy this time. A little bit heavy on the womanizing. Within the opening bit, he's just already making moves on money. He's just like, he's just turning on the schmoozing just right away. You have him doing a lot of practical stunts too, which, again, this is great to see just more practical stunt work again. It only just gets better from here. The one-liners are a little bit heavy. I mean, Bond usually delivers them when, just he's doing something, he ends up killing somebody, or just he ends up getting up and over on somebody, or even in some cases just he'll drop a one-liner because of just like a bad situation, like when he and Natalia are just tied up and thrown into the helicopter and everything. He's an iteratively better Bond. I personally am not a fan of the womanizing, but that's just me. I think he just turns it up way too hard.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that, yeah.
Just overall, I think he's an iteratively good Bond. I personally am not a fan of the womanizing. I know some people are. They're just like, but he's so smooth. He gets all the ladies. It's like, but he's a spy. He's supposed to be keeping a low profile. He's not supposed to be schmoozing up to every potential woman he wants to fool around with.
Yeah, but that's kind of been Bond's thing, though, right? Like, yeah, I'm a spy, but I like ass, too. Like, it's kind of his thing. If honestly we were going to go to the realism part with Bond, I think we would have a really tough time enjoying these movies.
Yeah. I think for me, unfortunately, part of my impression is colored by Daniel Craig's portrayal, and minimal womanizing. He keeps to the book's portrayal where just Bond is just a brutal and cunning and ruthless agent and just does what he needs to do to get the job done. So I guess that may also sort of bias me on why I'm not too much of a fan of Pierce Brosnan's portrayal with a lot of womanizing.
Okay, that's understandable. I find Brosnan's performance in this interesting because it seems like within about a half an hour of the movie, it becomes quite clear that he's trying to use all the Bonds as a template and mix and match to where it might suit him. You have the look and stature of Dalton, you have the charm of Moore, and then you have the ruggedness and the womanizing of Connery, I would say, in this movie. And the problem is he doesn't mix them well enough to create his own character. It just definitely seems like he's trying to pick and part as to what would be good for this situation. But with what he has, he's not bad. I actually like him in this movie. He's charming in some circumstances, and I think as well in the action, he does a very good job. I just think there is not a cohesive character there that is namely Brosnan's, but I think we get there around Tomorrow Never Dies. So I don't think he's bad. I think he's pretty good. He needs to cement what exactly Bond is going to be moving forward.
It's kind of interesting that you mentioned that he's sort of like a blend of everything. It almost sounds like he's trying to be a greatest hits of Bond album as a character, which is a very, very interesting thought.
So let's get into villain. Zero, there's like 4 villains in this movie. I mean, you have the main one, you have the henchman, you have the one general, and then you have the villain, the computer guy. But we only have to do 2. But the 2 I want to get into are the main villain and then the main henchman. So let's get into the main villain, which is 006 Alec Trevelyan, played by Sean Bean.
He's kind of interesting. He comes off like smarmy, sort of smart-assy, especially in the beginning and everything. As you go through the movie and everything, Trevelyan usually gets the jump on Bond for the most part. When they meet up again for that real awkward reunion in the masonry place, of course, Bonds just expect just some Russian guy going, all right, I'm meeting an arms dealer. He goes by the nickname Yanis, and this guy is in like a Russian armored bullet train. Okay, just probably expecting a Russian guy. And then, of course, he steps out. He's like, hello, James. And of course, it's just like Bond just gets completely disarmed by this. It's like, yo, what the shit?
Yeah.
And it seems to be that for most of them, Trevelyan usually gets the jump on Bond, or usually he outwits him. And then at the end, oh god, just especially with that line delivery at the end by Bond, where just he's holding him by like the boot from this satellite array, and of course Trevelyan's looking at him going, oh, for England, James? And then of course Bond's like, no, for me, and just lets him go to his death. And it just feels so satisfying, just Trevelyan just getting his at the end. You're just like yes, Bond finally gets one up on him.
I feel bad for people who saw this in theaters for one reason. And the reason is, the trailer for this movie, it actually exposed the entire twist.
Oh my god, that is... Oh, shit.
Yeah. If you watch the trailer on YouTube right now, the first minute of the trailer is, and Bond goes against his biggest villain yet, 006. I'm like, why? Why would you do this?
Holy shit.
Like, here's the thing, though. I like Alex Trevelyan as a villain. I like Sean Bean in this as well. I think a few problems come about that doesn't make it as good as it should be. One, it's clear why they did this. And the reason why is because they wanted to up the ante from the last movie, where the last movie, it was a villain who directly affected Bond by going after his friend. Now, you're making the villain his friend. I get where they were going with this one. I just don't think it works very well, and that for two reasons. One, it doesn't exactly make it clear that they are close in any way. And when Bond moves into the Goldeneye mission, there's really no hint about his feelings about Alec as time goes. It's not as impactful as you would really want it to be, but it's definitely interesting. But I do like the visual of Alec when you see him with his face scars coming from the shadows. I thought that was a really good look. I think he's decent, but it could have been a lot better.
That's a very fair point too, but just that mention about the trailer, holy crap, just talk about bumbling that one, holy shit.
I know, it was terrible. All right, so let's get into the henchman, or henchwoman, I should say. And that is Xenia Onatopp, played by Famke Jensen. Is it Famke Jensen?
I believe so.
Okay.
She's kind of like a Black Widow, killing dudes sexually for the most part, mostly because she's got a bit of a sadistic streak in her. Bond getting the one up on her in the Turkish bathhouse was kind of funny.
Yeah.
And then, of course, when she meets her demise, Bond gets his cheeky one-liner in, and he's just like, oh, she always liked a good squeeze. And I'm just like, yeah, I get it. Just gotta have the one-liner because she squeezed some dudes to death. I get it. And yeah, the sadism, oh my god, it is on full display when she just murders almost everyone in the Severnaya satellite station. You just see her just firing off the AK-47 machine gun, just gunning everyone down, and of course, she just sounds like she's just having an orgasm at this point, and I just love Oromos face. He's just like, what the fuck is your problem? As said, just her whole shtick is just she's kind of a massive sadist and likes to kill men in a sexual manner by squeezing them to death with her thighs, but I thought she was okay.
This would have been a very interesting villain to have with Bond. Just a woman who kills people during coitus. Like, that to me is like, oh my god, that would be an incredibly fascinating villain for Bond, because you can just imagine him in this scenario where he's having sex with a girl and all of a sudden he's trying to kill her. Like, that would be amazing. But what seems weird is that the writers of this film kind of made this character into like a writing exercise where they can see how many BDSM things we put into this without it being an R-rated movie. Let's find out. And that, like you mentioned, when she's gunning down and literally orgasming while she's doing it, it's just like, what the hell is this? Like, on the one hand, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. But on the other hand, it's like, this film is not that cheeky or comedic to make it land anything other than just silly. But what I will say, to give Famke Jensen credit for this, she relishes this role. I think she does a very good job. She has this feverish glee and this wide eyes when she's doing all this stuff. She looks fucking nuts, and she just seems like she's having a great time doing it. So on that end, I'll have to give her some credit. But other than that, I thought the villain was kind of corny. Could have been interesting, but not what I would have really liked. Let's get into the Bond girl, which is Natalia Simonova, played by Isabel Scorupco. Oh my god, I must have butchered that name.
She's kind of the damsel in distress for most of the movie, and then it isn't until the end where she sort of finally gets the initiative to just kind of do things and sort of not be a hindrance to Bond, especially when they get to Cuba and everything, and they start to infiltrate the base. Bond, as usual, just tells her, hey, stay out of trouble, and instead she ends up kind of skulking around the base to go reprogram the guidance computer and everything. And then, of course, towards the end, she ends up holding the helicopter pilot hostage. It's very sudden, it's just a very sudden change. This was like, I'm going from damsel to distress to self-sufficient woman. Okay, yeah, sure.
Yeah, sudden is a key word there, because a lot of the changes that happen to this character are that sudden. She goes from somebody who is deathly scared during the scene where the Goldeneye destroys her entire base to being able to survive the harsh winter down there, to trick people to let her have her way, to then hating Bond, having sex with Bond, then helping Bond, all in a way that is just unbelievable throughout the entire time. Like, the point where they start sleeping together, which is not at the end of the movie. That's a new one. I found it kind of laughable, because in that same scene, she's being told by Bond that Bond does not care about her and means nothing to her, and then 5 minutes later, they're sleeping together.
Yeah. And the lead up to the whole sequence is really corny, too, because, of course, like, she's trying to, just kind of be naive about the situation, and she's like, do you really have to kill Trevelyan? And Bond's just like, yo, he betrayed me and I've got a job to do. I don't relish it more than anyone else does, but a job's a job. I gotta kill this guy. And of course she's just like, oh god, this violence is so senseless, and oh, you're disgusting, and then just forcefully makes out with her, and then all of a sudden she's just like all right, I'm hot for you, let's go. And it's just like, oh, that is so shoehorned and hackneyed. Oh god.
Compared to other Bond girls, she's fine. She's just average and honestly kind of forgettable. I will say one thing though. Poor girl spent half the movie with the same outfit. I gotta give her props on that. Gotta give her props. Honestly, you mean to tell me that she went through there had to be a few days where she went from the base to the town in the same dress and she wasn't smelling like shit? Come on. Like, really?
Also, special mention to Joe Don Baker showing up as Jack Wade, because he previously played General Brad Whitaker in The Living Daylights.
Yeah. He was the ultimate Bond girl in this movie.
God, I love the scene where just Bond meets up with him in Russia, and of course he's just like you stiff ass Brits with your codes and crap. And then of course Bond holds him up. He's just like, show me the rose. And of course he's like, oh dear God, no, please.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. All right, spy action.
The action's just much more prominent in this movie, and going forward with the Brosnan movies. I mean, you start off with just a bungee jump into a base and everything. You're off to a great start there, and then of course the crazy escape sequence that Bond goes through with, fighting the plane to get it over a mountain. What a standout way to just start the movie, just with a high intensity action scene there. And then of course, as you go along the movie, you've just got fantastic action scenes here and there. Car chase scenes are usually fantastic. Special mention to the tank chase scene in St. Petersburg. Holy crap, that was just nothing but just absolutely just bombastic amounts of action, chaos, and just nothing but an exquisite chase. And then of course you've got some of the intense standoffs, like Bond in the train, where just he ends up kind of sneaking on. Trevelyan and Xenia are basically kind of like taunting him, going, well, we've got the upper hand and Oromov's got the girl, you lose. And it's just this very, very tense moment, just Bond just trying to calculate, okay, how do I do this and get what I need to get this mission done. And it's just such a tense moment, because you're just like, okay, how is he going to play this? Is he just going to focus on the revenge part and, just put Natalia in a bad situation? Or, just is he going to rescue Natalia? And as a result, just Trevelyan escapes. Just how he's going to do this? Or is it just going to be like some crazy outlier scenario where he gets both done? And it's just such a good sequence and everything because of the intensity of the situation. And then of course the scene for the Cuban Missile Base, that's just a lot of bombastic action, a lot of practical stunt work and action choreography, especially when you've got Bond fighting Trevelyan in the satellite array, just fists flying, throwing objects at each other, trying to shoot each other. That one was a really intense and close quarters action sequence, and it was fantastic. The spy action stuff, really, really good in this movie.
I agree. Like, everything about the movie so far to me has been average. This is where it goes from that to excellent. The action is excellent in this movie. I like how you mentioned the dam sequence. What I like about the dam sequence, and a lot of the sequences in this movie too, is that the sequences go from sequence to sequence to sequence. So you have the dam sequence that starts with the bungee jump scene. Then it goes into what happens there to the end of that. it just branches off really well. Because a lot of times when action movies do this, they seem to say, we just have to have 3 separate action sequences crammed into one. But in this movie, they take those action sequences and they bridge them together in such a very well done way. It's both exciting and entertaining. I also liked how you mentioned the tank scene. I think the tank scene is great for a number of reasons, not only because it's exciting and the practical effects are good, it's also fairly funny, but not in a campy way, which is what I really liked about that sequence. And then at the end, we have what happens at the Cuban Missile Base, and that was a really good one as well. Man, I gotta tell you, I really liked the action in this movie. It took a real good chunk of time out of this movie. Like, most of the film, I think, is good parts are action-based. There's one issue that I have, and it's that the music just doesn't seem to fit with the action most of the time. A lot of the music is like a mix between, I would say, industrial and hip-hop in a kind of weird way. And it just doesn't really fit very well with the action. I'll have a bigger issue with the music as we move forward to conclusions, but I think the music is kind of like the one thing I don't like about the action, is that the music doesn't back it up very well.
Yeah, it's a bit unfortunate because we've got some moments where the music works out, the tank scene being the exemplar, in my opinion, because it's just kind of a fun little remix of the Bond theme and everything. You got some of the moments where just the music's just kind of off in its own world almost. When Natalia's trying to go to the church and stuff like that, and ends up being grabbed by both Boris and Xenia, just the music doesn't feel right here. Just there could have been something else that sort of gives the whole like spying espionage element, but don't like the choice here. So yeah, I'm definitely going to be with you on that one. That yeah, a lot of the music just feels off.
Yeah, and we'll get more into that as our conclusion goes by. So, theme song and opening credits, which is Goldeneye, written by Bono and The Edge, performed by Tina Turner.
This is pretty good. I think that's mostly because I do quite like Tina Turner.
Oh yeah.
It's just got the usual Tina Turner style to it and everything. It's not going to be as grand as Live and Let Die, and I think that one's just going to be hard to top for a good while.
I could see why,
but
yeah.
It's definitely good. Maybe top 5, maybe top 3. I think that's mostly because I do quite like Tina Turner.
Oh, okay. I like the song too. I think it's very energetic and it has a lot of bombast with the voice of Tina Turner in it. Very exciting. I gotta say though, man, this opening sequence is both weird and fucking ugly. I was watching this going, what the fuck am I watching? Because who the fuck decided, you know what would be great? A sexy woman opening her mouth and a gun comes out of it. What the like, what is this? Also, the way that the statues look and everything, I just think it looked hideous, to be absolutely honest. So I think this is a huge step down the opening sequence, but I like the theme song. Well,
yeah, I think as far as the opening sequence goes, it's one of the first Bond movies that uses CG and everything for the opening sequence. And yeah, it's definitely not one of the nicer looking ones. And I get it. A lot of the motifs are supposed to be like anti-communist. I mean, you've got like these naked Bond girls like just breaking down like communist statues. You've got the girl that had the gun in her mouth blowing away like communist flags and stuff like that. Lots of anti-communist imagery, but yeah, it doesn't look great, and you can tell it's kind of like the studio's first foray into try to play around with CG and stuff.
Yeah, it just looks hideous to me. I watched it going, oh my lord, what is this crap? But alright, anyway. Zero, conclusion time.
I will say this is a mission completed, mostly because just it's iteratively better than the past Bond movies. Much more action this time around, and Brosnan, well, he is sort of a latest hits album of the past Bonds. He's not bad at what he does. It definitely does feel a little bit disjointed sometimes, kind of like we mentioned. This seems like it sort of irons itself out as he progresses along with the movies that he ends up portraying Bond in. Unfortunately, the Bond girl is all over the place, just damsel in distress in one sequence, self-starting achiever in another, and it's just all over, so not too great there. Sean Bean has some great moments as Trevelyan. On the top, she's a bit weird.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
She had an opportunity to be one of the more interesting villains, but she ends up being a little bit on the weird side. The humorous moments in this movie are pretty good. They're kind of cheeky, and of course, you've got the one-liners that Bond delivers, but overall, just I think really the big star of the show is just the action and stunt sequences. They're just really, really excellent. They're over the top. They're just bombastic as you could get. The tank sequence is just one hell of a show. You've got this big tank just chasing a tiny little car through St. Petersburg, just causing just untold amount of damage, just crushing the corners of buildings, throwing jeeps off bridges and stuff like that. It's just so much. It's just fantastic. If you don't mind a Bond that's real heavy on the action and not quite too heavy on the spy stuff, then yeah, I would say you're probably going to be in for a great time with this one.
I agree with you on a lot of points. I'm going to say mission accomplished as well with this one, but I agree with you on a lot of areas. First off, I think everything about the film is average, except for the action, which is excellent. The one thing I want to get to talk about on this as well is the very inconsistent tone of the film. And I think the tone is inconsistent for a couple of reasons. One, you have this very dark palette look that feels a little bit grizzled and grimy, which is very unlike a lot of the Bond films. And then you have the music that we talked about that's very industrial with a little bit of hip-hop. Seems very off, but the film tries to make itself out to be a lot more serious than I think it was meant to. I think the reason why is, do you remember what was popular around then when it came to spy thrillers?
Not offhand.
Do you remember Jack Ryan?
Yeah.
Like Crimson Tide, Clear and Present Danger, Patriot Games. Those were popular at the time. They were spy fiction novels and spy fiction movies. I think what they tried to do in this movie is they said, well, we need to update Bond to this generation, so we should probably incorporate some of that stuff in there too. And I think they went a little heavy on it. I don't mind a little bit of seriousness in Bond, but the tone just seems very off for a Bond film. And that has to do with, I think, mostly the music and how it just doesn't fit with the rest of the action and what's going on in the film. I do like how it's shot. I do like how it looks, but again, it's a little too dark. And I think the next few films lighten it up a bit, make it a little more fun, where I think this movie is trying to be a little more serious than it really needed to be. But again, the action is great in this movie, and the action is, I think, what makes this overall a good movie to watch. So I would say mission accomplished for me on this one. Mission accomplished for you?
Yeah, mission accomplished.
Mission accomplished for Goldeneye. Now, if you want my full review on this movie, you can go to my website at IamTheWiz.com. You'll have my full written review right on the site, along with a link to the video that has this review that you've just listened to. Thank you for listening to this review. If you want to know what we're reviewing in the next couple of days, you can look on the screen right now to see what's coming up next. If you like what you heard, go ahead and leave a like on this video. If you want to discuss your opinion on the film or the review itself, please leave a comment. And if you want to hear more, subscribe to the channel. Thank you again for listening. I will talk to you next time.